That's Freddie Deep, knows it all. That's my old name, G.
I saw you toss the kites on high above the birds about the sky, and all around I heard you pass like lady skirts across the grass. Oh, wind blowing all day long. Oh, wind that sings so loud a song. I saw the different things you did, but always you yourself you hid. I felt you push, I heard you call, I could not see yourself at all. Oh, wind blowing all day long. Oh, wind that sings so loud a song. And you that are so strong and cold to blow, where are you young or old? Are you a beast, a field and tree, or just a stronger child than me? Oh, wind blowing all day long. Oh, wind that sings so loud a song.
Which from the impure dynamic dual rolling through cognitive scientists and symbologists who knew. Movie breaks down brains, neurons, and cognition, while Pujo deciphers symbols, ancient traditions. In the lab or field, they're a force to reckon, cracking codes, solving mysteries in every section. Vuvi with the data, charting human mind. Pujo with the symbols, finding meaning in kind. From the depths of thought to ancient runes, they're on a mission, making discovery soon. Together they tackle what's better than this misunderstood. Vuvi and Pujo buddies in the neighborhood. Breaks down brains, neurons, and cognition, while Pujo deciphers symbols, ancient traditions. In the lab or field, they're a force to reckon, cracking codes, solving mysteries in every section. Movie with the data charting human mind. Pulo with the symbols finding meaning and kind. From the depths of thought to ancient ruins, they're on a mission making discovery soon. Together they tackle what's been misunderstood. Vuvi and Pulo, buddies in the neighborhood. Dynamic duo rolling through.
He's carving hands into your tail. Vander Clay jogs down the rabbit trail. Breaks your heart, sheds no tear. His metal never fails. PDK, what boat do you sail? Join the conversation, world may soon not exist. Swim up the estuary, abandon the abyss. In the chaos, find a twist. When the portal opens to a place unreal, from the till he begs you visit powers to heal. Briny pool, you'll find your cure. In his world, nothing's obscure. Chasing shadows in the light, Vander Clay is out of sight. Mysteries on the rise, he's the truth behind our lives. And the stories he will weave, steps unknown yet we believe. In his wisdom, subtle might, guides you through the darkest night. When the portal opens to a place unreal, from the till he begs you visit powers to heal. Briny pool, you'll find your cure. In his world, nothing's obscure.
Ducks eat bread.
They do. They like it.
Performance movie and Pulo dynamic duo rolling through. Cognitive scientists to build up this. Oh no! Movie breaks down brains, neurons, and cognition. While Pulo deciphers symbols, ancient traditions. In the lab or field, they're a force to reckon. Cracking codes, solving mysteries in every section. Movie with the data, charting human mind. Pulo with the symbols, finding meaning and kind. From the depths of thought to ancient runes, they're on a mission making discovery soon. Together they tackle what's been misunderstood. Vuvi and Pulo, buddies in the neighborhood.
Still I have it. There are moments I conveniently forget that I'm a 40-year-old man. The last vestiges of a ghost long dead. The ghost with a messiah complex. A messiah too lazy to rise or ascend. Happily hurt and hard. A hanger-on or haunting of a time past. A heroic dream of the harrowing of hell. Failure to launch. Cling to a life vest, treading in spells that linger and last. Mom and Dad, righteous and mad, daydreamers with ghosts of their own. My memory of them stoic, looking with aims to pretend. Always on the brink of somewhere. Each a child dancing on the fence. On down the river, dreamt in the sunshine, Saturday morning cartoons, the only Sabbath I knew. A disciple of Jim Henson and John Hughes. Worship in cathedrals where the toys are us. Baptized in ball pits. A clown served the sacrament we eat. More Pepsi and Pizza Hut. Say please. Say cheese. Between Kurt Cobain, a scrambled cable strain, towers tumbling, Super Bowls, and reality TV, the ghost is constitutionally unwilling and intrinsically unable to see and be seen, searching madly for attention to seek. But you could be anything. Never say never. If you've got nothing nice to say, don't say nothing, ever. Don't talk to strangers. See what I say. Just do it. You don't listen very well, do you? You don't do very well, do you? You're not looking too good, are you? Keep up. Appearances aren't what they seem. Will you ever grow up? You look like you're stuck. I think you took too much. Echoes the ghost within the host, who prays the dead bury their dead and stay buried in a fading dream.
I love that poem. I love that poem. I think Chad did an amazing job in that poem. I watched the Kurt Cobain documentary from HBO Documentaries last night, and Kurt Cobain was born 4 years after me. And there's always sort of the leader of a generation is usually at the front end of that generation. And so he's an early Xer. But boy, that documentary portrayed vividly how just a tortured child, and then finding, fame and wealth and all of those things. And so, and I just heard the name Kurt Cobain out there from who knows where, and I never thought much about it, never listened to Nirvana, but watching that documentary just gave me a sense of his importance for a particular slice of Gen X. And yeah, it was quite moving. Well, today we're going to go over some of the themes that I worked in in October. And it's a chance for me to hear from you all. Here is the invite. And the first topic is the satisfaction definition of God. Now, this came up when I was making the video on Alex O'Connor's appearance on Seen and Unseen. And a big part of what's been happening in the advent of the sacred, in the recession of modernity, is that the question of what we mean by God is super salient, and it's always sort of behind the scenes. And that question of what we mean by God is sort of a way into thinking about many of the discussions that we've had. This morning I was that's actually what I was listening to in the car on my way over yesterday when I dealt with all the dumping. This morning, a lot of the garbage was back. I took some pictures. I'll probably tweet out what happened this morning with me and the homeless community that I share a neighborhood with. And so I'll probably tweet about that unless somebody wants to hear it, and I'll tell the story. But the Stoa, which I should probably have Peter on the channel, because I'd really love to hear about how that whole thing has evolved. They were sort of going strong for a while and then they receded, but they had a he did an interview with Tanya Luhrmann, who is just brilliant. And I love the 2 books of hers that I've read about many of the kinds of things that we talk about here. And it was a tremendous video. And that, contrasting that with another great video that Elizabeth Oldfield did with a witch, which was really good. And I just haven't had time. I would love to treat all these things video-like, but I just don't have time to sit down and make the videos. So they just get mentioned. But this whole question of God, the world is chasing something that it struggles to name. And in many ways, the old name is God. I was thinking, I was reading Dreer this morning. He had a good piece. He had a couple of good pieces. And, it struck me the question of why monasticism collapsed and why there's very much a desire for neo-monasticism today. Remember one of my colleagues once said, if I had time and money, I wouldn't want to start a seminary. I'd want to start a monastery connected to my church, not a seminary. And monastery, of course, is a community dedicated to pursuing God as the ultimate source of satisfaction. And of course, Augustine put this plainly. The Desert Fathers lived this out in their asceticism. And when monasticism at its peak didn't achieve what we might think. The Martin Shaw, Jonathan Peugeot conversation was just tremendous. And I loved how Shaw sort of basically put out on the table, and Jonathan laughed and agreed that monasticism isn't for everyone. Not everyone is able to be a desert sage. And this is in some ways when part of what happens in history is that when something gets a little out of kilter, the other thing rises, but usually the swings are way too wild and way too disruptive for proper balance. And so the monasteries were just swept away. Of course, the English started doing that even before the Protestant. They embraced the Protestant Reformation, just because Henry VIII saw all of that gold and said, basically didn't really say this, but in some ways could have said, so you want a vow of poverty, eh? I'll take all that gold that you have massed and I'll use it for what I want to use it for. And so, of course, Henry VIII raided the monasteries. And part of what happened in Germany was a similar thing. The monasteries were raided. But even in Catholicism, where the monastic movements endured, and in Orthodoxy, they play nothing like the role they play. Part of what I wanted to do a video about, and maybe still will, about Elizabeth Oldfield's interview with an autistic witch. She's autistic, and she's a witch, and she has visions. Such a fascinating thing. Connect that up with what Tanya Luhrmann said about who tends to have visions. It's just fascinating stuff. But a big part of what I wanted to say with respect to the Elizabeth Oldfield's conversation with the witch was Ross Douthat's observations about institutions. That one thing Christianity managed to achieve was a degree of compatibility with institutions, which has benefited and blessed Christianity greatly, even though it's a constant rub in Christianity about institutions. And you can hear that. Luke Jess complains that I've never clipped him. Luke complains that I'm always clipping his live stream and I'm never clipping Luke. But I do quote Luke. Luke is very much an Ivan Illich anti-institutionalist in many respects. And so, yeah, everybody gutted. Everybody took their turns gutting the monasteries, including the Vikings. And if God, and so then we enter the secular realm, and you've got anti-institutional spiritualists like witches and New Agers. And they won't institutionalize. They can't institutionalize. It's sort of a redux of animism. And animism and institutions are in deep tension. That's right, Clint. There's that big word. Yes, lots from Neil. So, and Neil, who I discovered had a 12K YouTube channel out there, which is about what I don't know what that found that super interesting. If you're to yourself, the comment section doesn't help my ADHD. So that's why I close my eyes. So in the secular age, then, the YouTube anthem, I still haven't found what I'm looking for. You can find that on the lips of New Agers. You can find that on the lips of church people. You can find that on the lips of everything. I think it's a function of the age of decay. I think it's a function of what I think Jesus says quite often, which is that this current dispensation, and I don't mean that as a dispensationalist or a Darbyist, but this current dispensation can only hold so much, which is in fact why Jesus ascends and will return in a different dispensation, a new heaven and a new earth, where we will reign with him, but our information and the details of which are very sketchy. And so I turn back to Augustine, in that our hearts are restless until they find their rest in God. And so the monastics sought that, the secularists seek it. We're all seeking God, but then when I use that word, all of the formation of that word just jumps into your imagination, because that's how language works. And so then that throws us into the dilemma around God number one and God number two. Is God a person? Is God agentic? Or is God arenic? And of course, God is both. And the Hebrews were the ones that really put that on the table, that there is no meta-divine realm. All the other religions imagined a meta-divine realm in which the gods play. And the Hebrews said, no, there is no arena above God. But then the incomprehensibility of God continues to dog us. And not only is he incomprehensible, Clint, you keep triggering me. Not only is God incomprehensible, but it's the greatest longing of all, because we can only be had by him. We can't fully have him, and we desire to have him, but he can't be had by us because we're simply too small, which is why the church is the bride of Christ and not the husband of Jesus, because what we finally long for is to be his bride, and we're too small. We certainly participate in that individually, but we have to really do that collectively. So Alex, you jumped in. What do you think about the satisfaction definition of God?
So satisfaction according to God, what would that look like?
No. That's our satisfaction is only finally, we are It's basically Augustine. And actually, some people will cringe at this, but John Piper, with his Christian hedonism, was barking up the same tree. We are not finally satisfied by anything in this world, just like God cannot be reduced to anything in this world. The only way we will finally find full, complete, eternal satisfaction is with God, nothing less. That's the thesis.
Gotcha. So it's like the user's manual by the person or the company that created the let's metaphorically say a car, or no, let's bring it back to more some kind of mechanical toy, and the instructions are given by the one who created it, so it can work at its best, and the functionality of it, it's by design. So in my why we can't get satisfaction in this world until we submit to God is because those settings came from the manufacturer. So all that stuff, for it to be, if the car needs to be tuned or maintained, if you need to change the oil at 3,000 miles so the oil doesn't burn up, and you're like, no, I'm gonna do it my way, and so you go 10,000 miles, 20,000 miles before changing the oil. Eventually, that's gonna come back at you. So it's like
You have to land the plane
satisfaction
here.
without sense.
Dude, I know
Okay,
you go long, Alex. So I think I got what you're saying. And
so
it's a deeply evangelical Protestant framing, but it's right that the difficulty is that we finally, and this is where my Calvinism comes in. God is not finally something that we pursue. God is someone who pursues and eventually has us, because we cannot wield him, and any attempt to wield him is deeply offensive once we know him. So
yes,
does that ring true to you?
yes, it's why if you so for me to understand what Christianity is, I have to understand what the concept of sanctification is, because if I'm not being transformed in the notion of sanctification and whatever that means to me, I'm going to be way off the mark, because I know what a life without Christ in the rebellion. I know what that looks like.
Yep.
I lived it out, and there was pain, suffering, torment, and all kinds of debauchery, and it was, there was no set. I thought I was having fun, but in the long run, it was
Alex,
smoking mirrors.
corner are our best approximation in some ways of Russell Brand. By the way you look, by the way you talk, by the story you just told, you are our Russell Brand in some ways. I don't know if that tracks for you or not, but I could see that. But I got a few others here that I want to get in, because basically what this is going to be is a half hour in each subject. So I'm gonna keep us moving fast. Chad, the girl dad, did you want to say something, or
Yeah. No, well, I think it's funny that Alex said that it wasn't fun. I had tremendous fun being a heathen. I mean, let's just be honest about that, people. Like, there's a reason why. I mean, there's a reason why, you know, why when you can't or won't seek God, you will, one will be appointed. I was just eating mud, by the way. That was really good. But like in Carl Jung, dun dun dun, he expressed this in a letter that he wrote in an exchange that he had with Bill Wilson, who was Bill Wilson's basically the co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous. He and Carl Jung had a brief exchange via letters, and Carl Jung made the expression that he said that he believed that alcoholics, what alcoholics really had was a low level longing for God, and that they would find that they would seek that out anywhere they could except God. Because like you said, it's like this offensive thing. It's like, but you can't avoid the question that still calls you forward. And so that's what, that's inevitably what alcoholism basically is. And it's like this, my sponsor will call it a misdirected search for power. And it works and until it doesn't,
Yep. Yep.
and
And there are many of those in this world.
oh yes,
Alcohol's just one of many. And that
oh,
this is sort of where you get to Karen Wong and her, you get to the thing where you realize there is no bottom. And alcohol doesn't go deep enough.
yeah, yeah, and let's say even if you go in the opposite direction, you go higher,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
There's no heights high enough. I thought I was like, pursuing some sort of interesting pinnacle, let's say, in my life. Like I thought things were going so well, I could hardly believe it. And then it's like, oh, you think that's as high as you can go, do you? Oh, here's a daughter,
That's right.
right? And it's still only, and like this is, it's ridiculous. I'm listening to Lord, for the first time. I'm listening to Lord of the Rings, and I've just been introduced to Tom Bombadil. What a great character! It just, for some reason, he's coming to mind as it relates to this. Like, there's a guy who seems satisfied.
Yep. 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 All right, Christian.
I'm out of here.
I'm on a fast track with you guys because we got a lot of material to get through today. So, Christian, what say you?
I was wondering if you were going to quote John Piper after you gave that little tag on.
I think I do think that Piper is basically right with his Christian hedonism. I know that's going to trigger a lot of people in this corner, but I disagree with John Piper in a number of ways. But I think his Christian hedonism is basically on target.
He's a good Baptist Calvinist. So
no, not a Baptist Calvinist. I'm a real Calvinist. We baptize babies.
He is. I said he's a good Baptist Calvinist. Whatever. He's good at being Calvinist as a Baptist. So the thing, can we be satisfied, I guess, without God is the question, or is it possible? And I had a great conversation yesterday with Graham Pardun, and so, like his in reference to his talk at Northwest Estuary conference, that even as I was talking to my therapist the other day, like what it means to be an idealist, like the ideal Christianity, the ideal way of life, that's definitely been a big struggle. And I think for myself, we were both like kind of talking about the ideal Christianity, and I think that what kind of came to my mind is at the end of the Lord's Prayer when it says like, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And I think, I think sometimes we can find like that like, what was it in the Martin Shaw, a conversation with Peugeot he had yesterday when he talked about the pinpricks of experiencing God versus the wave of experiencing God.
Oh, that was so good.
And so I think we do have those waves of satisfaction here on earth as it is in heaven, but it's not going to be complete, or it's not going to be fully realized. But I think sometimes in the kind of Calvinist flavor, it can sometimes be like, you can never, there can be kind of a critique of like your every bit of your life is so depraved that, you can never blah, blah, blah. So anyways, yes, I think you can, and it will only be fully realized in a way that we can't totally comprehend yet.
Yeah. But I think I want to be really careful in this to not just sort of punt, because in some ways, all we can do is punt because we cannot describe. I mean, satisfaction itself is difficult to describe. We experience it. We have a sense of it. The word is very real, but to actually describe it is difficult. And so, for example, Dante, you have the beatific vision. And so beauty very much gets that satisfaction for us. But I remember in seminary, one of my roommates was an African seminary student who was studying philosophy. And, I talked about visions of the new heavens and the new earth in something other than, what we will do in the new heavens and the earth is just sort of monasticism, ubiquitous monasticism, where we just sit there and look. And I think, no, it'll be more like the garden. It will be, I think of Eric Liddell, when God made me fast. When I run, I feel his pleasure. And so I think that we actually, satisfaction, when we feel satisfaction, it is sort of like Jordan Peterson's meaning gyroscope. Satisfaction is a gyroscope that is pointing us to God. And now, as Chad and Alex both said, and C.S. Lewis says, we often sell out short because we think sex is the goal, or alcohol is the goal, or success is the goal. And it's like, no, we feel satisfaction because there is goodness in it, but we ought not to stop short.
Maybe purpose is tied to meaning. Meaning is tied to satisfaction. And that has definitely been part of the space here.
Yeah, I was going to mention, because we're complicated, because we also have the conscious and the wanting to be accepted, and also our physical. So we get hungry. So you're like, oh, I'm gonna do away with food. No, you can't do away with food. And also so food as a metaphor. What about the love food? What about the spiritual food? What about the acceptance food? What about the friendship food? There's all these desires and wants and needs, and where's the satisfaction and all that when we're in rebellion? It's just, I know why it wasn't fun for me. Trust me, I went all in, and maybe that's why it was so unsatisfactory, because it was so painful that the pain outdid the pleasure. It wasn't like, when I was timid, it was all glorious fun. But when I decided to go all in, it became so chaotic and painful and tormented that that pleasure could not last, and it broke me, to the core. And that's when I said, no, okay, no more. I will follow you, Christ. And that's when I decided to stop my rebelliousness. And ever since, and I'm not saying it's easy to be a Christian, because it's not easy to be a Christian. Because we're stuck in this flesh, and here comes hunger again.
Yeah.
As a metaphor, here comes this
that's
carnal.
why God is and Peterson is right about this. God is at the top of the hierarchy. And if God isn't at the top, and Lewis, Keller, Peterson have made this point, if you make other things the top, everything else is disordered, and even the good things that are given cannot be enjoyed. And so that's why the loves have to be in proper order.
Can I add one thing, Paul?
Yes.
The idea about satisfaction, you mentioned more like the garden, and like the idea of cultivating. I get a lot of satisfaction from cultivating, which is like kind of the root of culture, and I would make the assumption that you get satisfaction from cultivating
People,
said
communities.
corner. Yeah, and that's a fractal of the master gardener or something like that. That satisfaction isn't and what is it, if I'm most satisfied in God whenever he's most, I can't remember the quote, but it's when you're walking in the way of that, living within that fractal of what it means to be like, to be like the Father, to be like the gardener, to be like that, and not in a I am the Father gardener, but I'm following that way. So,
Alan, we're at the half hour here, so last word for this, and then I'm changing topics.
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to jump on because I just tuned in a couple minutes ago, but this is funny because I just made a video about this exact topic. My first video, it was weirdly synchronous with that topic of the title of my video is very clickbaity, but can Ozempic lead to Jesus?
Yep.
And the idea is, well, it's like we're going like the gift of Ozempic is we all have this like, well, we have this desire managed. Like we all, I'm not in perfect shape, but I do this, or I am beautiful and I have high status. It's like when everyone's super, no one is. When everyone's skinny, no one's skinny. Like we're gonna see the crumbling of an idol where it's like a strong god. Like that's a strong idol of fitness. And I'm not saying
Yep.
it's gonna be perfect, and there's still steroids, and people are gonna do, get big muscles, and because everyone's skinny and blah blah blah. But like the death of one of those hierarchies is a gift because you get to be like, well, not just like, oh, I know I'm tempted. I know, like, there's a deeper way in which we're blinded to how much we are attuned to that hierarchy. And the gift is, if you watch it crumble, you'd be like, well, I never thought the Titanic would sink. I never thought that mountain would crumble. I never thought this. It's like, okay, but now you have a moment to be like, before you give that attention to a new idol, is to like have a moment to be like, what's at the top of the hierarchy? What is the thing? Because it's not just the gifts, like Alex was talking about. It's not just the pleasure that's given to you. There's a longevity factor, and it's like what idol will never crumble, like what
Right.
hierarchy will never collapse. And people don't want to think about that. They're like, no, I'll be young and attractive and rich forever. It's like, actually you're not. And Ozempic proved that just even things that you're like, oh well, I might get old, but being thin will always be the thing. It's like, sometimes gods collapse and die. And so just really that longevity factor, and like seeing, like, I think because sometimes even are people like, you know what, live young, die fast, like it's okay that I die, but it's like, not only will you die, but the ideal will die. Like
Right.
James Dean will eventually, you'll be like, I'll be like James Dean. I'll be like, well, one day people are gonna be like, who the F is James Dean? Like, who
Yep.
cares? And you'll be like,
Yeah.
no, but I thought
Hey,
I'd,
baby. It all
I'd be,
goes.
it's romantic and people will always remember me driving my sports car into a tree. It's like eventually they're just like, no one cares. And it's like even the deathly idea, even the things where we're like, well, I see my own shadow. I see the ways in which I've given myself to this ideal. It's like you don't really see all of it. And when it dies, when that idol dies, you can really see like, okay, wow, I'd given myself to something that was like a dying god, but like I want to put my trust into something that will never die.
Yeah.
I
So I
never
know that
thought
was
the
a little bit
body
of a rant.
positivity. I never thought the body positivity hierarchy would fail.
My
Not for a lack
hierarchies,
of trying.
Okay, Grease.
yeah, but
All right,
so,
I'm dropping y'all out. You can come in again, but we're moving on to the next topic. And the next topic is Jordan Peterson and Russell Brand's praying the Lord's Prayer in Washington, D.C. And someone sent me a dude who basically he got his video rise fighting the jab, and he used to be a big Jordan Peterson fan, and then he sort of fell away when Jordan Peterson took the vaccine, and so that then discredited Jordan Peterson in his eyes. And he saw that Jordan Peterson looked up to Russell Brand, and then he thought, well, Russell Brand must in some ways be higher than Jordan Peterson. And then, of course, Russell Brand has had this conversion. I have not followed the drama around Russell Brand. To me, whether or not Russell Brand was out there in his underwear was of less significance than the fact that someone is having Russell Brand baptize people. But call me an institutionalist. So then what I wanted out of that video was I wanted feedback into what does it mean? Is this dread Christian nationalism? Is this Jordan Peterson trying to embody the top of the hierarchy? But I had a wonderful conversation with Matt. It's in No Wait, No Ads. It'll probably come out this weekend. I want to clip it up, though, a little bit because there's so many good sections in that video. And, is this Christian nationalism? Is Jordan Peterson will pray the Lord's Prayer in public, but he won't join a church. Russell Brand joined a church, but is Russell Brand on any part of a church? Grim Grizz went after Russell Brand pretty quickly. And Grim Grizz is not alone, saying you ought not to be out there platforming Christianity until you publicly confess many of the sins that you're guilty of. And of course, for other people, because of how many things they've, Jordan Peterson has lost credibility because of the political stands and actions that he's taken, et cetera, et cetera. So I wanted to hear from you. What on earth do you think of this? And that's also within the Vervaeke Peugeot conversation about ritual, where that was just an outstanding smaller conversation. And I'm sure that class that John Vervaeke is doing for the symbolic world is going to be absolutely outstanding when we begin to appreciate that ritual is unavoidable and automatic. And the fact that they consciously employed this central ritual, to me, just blew me away. So Christian has lingered. So I assume you have thoughts about this too, Christian. What do you think?
I don't think that they necessarily. I think Russell Brand did that under his own volition. I don't think that Brett Weinstein was saying, "Hey, and by the way, Russell, why don't you close this with?" Because he's also prayed with Tucker Carlson on his show, and the thing that I find interesting is, he said, "I'm becoming Catholic." That was he's joining the Catholic Church. Yeah,
Russell Brand.
That was his initial statement, was that he was like joining the Catholic Church.
Well,
but
he likes the jewelry, so
well, but he likes the priesthood of all believers too. So it's
yeah, he certainly does. If you think the Catholic Church is going to let him go out in a stream and baptize folks, he's got another thing coming.
Yeah, and so
then again, the Catholic Church is very strange. There are probably someone will point to Catholics out there that do that sort of thing.
Yeah, Trinity, as long as it's in the Trinity or something. But I think that's the kind of, is he submitted to something? But I think another piece of his journey, because I followed it for a long time. His first awakening was through getting sober in anonymous, through rehab, and then being a part of anonymous culture. And so, and that's very ritualistic. That's very.
When you say anonymous culture, do you mean recovery culture?
Yeah,
okay.
NA, AA, and
okay.
so, and people have talked before about Peterson. You've talked about him. His Canadian Protestant roots. He probably had the Lord's Prayer somewhere, and in the back, and it was kind of interesting to watch. But what it leads me to always think about is a statement that you've made many times, which is well, what more do you want from this guy? I don't know.
We as the public demand. I mean, and Sherry made a point too. Sherry's like, do all of us have to confess all of our sins to everyone? I mean, how Protestant are we going to go? And part of it is, so to some degree, if people have a negative valence about a person, they're going to maintain that no matter what the person does. So
yeah, it's interesting, and sometimes only time will tell. Because my first encounter with Russell Brand in pop culture was him making fun of the Jonas Brothers for wearing purity rings. That's the first thing I remember him doing. Other than being in.
I should add that the Jonas Brothers graduated from the same high school I did, even though they're not Christian Reformed. Because after I left, at some point, Eastern Christian became place for the celebrities. And so if you go to the Wikipedia Eastern Christian page, it's they're looking for a Christian alternative. So purity rings, not a CRC tradition. But
no,
keep going, please.
Deeply, but that was, and so he's definitely on the other side of whatever that was. I mean, and so there's been a long shift in him, but I think Grimm's critique or criticism is, there's parts of it that are valid, because so you're a public person.
Agreed.
You need to maybe speak publicly to these things, and is it an excuse or not an excuse? If some of those things are actually tied up in litigation, then he may not technically be able to talk about certain things. But
well, that's really important, Christian, because one of the things that Christianity continues to not be able to completely shed is the institution of institutions. And I mean, if there's anything deeply non-institutional, it's Russell Brand in a river with an evangelical pastor baptizing someone because Russell Brand is a celebrity.
Yeah.
And so Russell Brand gets to travel up the status hierarchy. He would not do that in an Orthodox church. He would not do that in a Christian Reformed church. This is akin to the conversation we had about, Jordan Hall. I mean, are we susceptible to Jordan Hall's celebrity? Now, I think Jordan Hall has behaved himself in a far better way than Russell Brand in many respects, but he's a very different person.
Yeah, personality.
Right. I still wouldn't allow either Russell Brand or Jordan Hall to preach in a Christian Reformed church because there are institutions and hierarchies there.
Yeah,
So
I would just add that he it seems to be that he's kind of doing his own thing, and I think that comes with its own dangers and risks. That's the perception, at least, that it seems, but he's doing it publicly.
See, I don't know. A lot of people say that Russell Brand and Jordan Peterson are doing this to boost their careers. I don't think so in either case. I think, in fact, in many ways, these displays of Christian practice diminish their careers more than help them.
Depends on what career they want.
Yes. Yep. That's true too. All right, Alex, you jumped in next.
Yeah. So, anyways, I was beginning to how can I say this? It reminded me of the conversation on the TLC just last week about Saul of Tarsus and the Christians that encountered him when he was blind. They were very skeptical, and they were afraid because he was a figure and he had authority, and he wasn't a friend of Christians, right? And nobody knew, right? God knows the future, but they didn't know how it was all going to play out. I remember also, what's the rapper's name? I just blanked on his name. Kanye West. No, Kanye West. Kanye West. I heard his pastor. I'm like, this pastor seems like he knows what he's talking about. So I'm like, hey, we'll see how this plays out. And that didn't play out too well. I don't think
Kanye's not quite been the example of what most Christians are looking for lately.
Right. But we're still trying to figure out. I wonder how this is going to play out.
Yeah.
But who knows? Who
Yeah.
knows? What if?
Yeah.
I mean, what if we get a Paul, or maybe not? Maybe no, he still Saul. As a metaphor, we don't know the future.
But I think you're exactly right. A tree will be known by its fruit, and fruit takes a while to mature. So we will see what current iterations of Russell Brand are. I actually am quite optimistic with respect to Russell Brand personally. And part of that, I think, is because of recovery culture. I have a lot of confidence. I have seen recovery culture bear really good fruit long term, which leads me to Chad. What do you have to say?
I think you should probably talk to his sponsor, if he has one.
He should.
It'd be. I've been conflicted about him for a while because, like, it's not even just about the culture as a whole suffering from it, but like he himself may pay for these kinds of things in ways that he can't foresee, and like, I mean, there's a reason for anonymity as at the level of like your recovery, as it relates to things, and there's, I think, probably a reason why I think Jesus says something about praying in the closet, and like those are all kind of tied together. It's like guys like Russell Brand and myself, we are deeply egotistical, and we also like to think that we're like hot shit and cool and nice and good guys, and then once we start doing good stuff, we don't handle these things well. And then, I mean, you bring up Kanye West. I mean, that was a hell of a shift in like no time at all. And that, so whatever. That's my thinking on it. What the hell do I know? I don't know.
All right.
Hey,
No, I
Grizz,
think
good
there's
to
a lot
see
of
you.
wisdom in that. All right, we're gonna do Risen, then we're gonna like Grim Grizz defend himself because I named him in this little chapter. So Risen, what say you?
Well, I've been trying to pay the dog tax, but he's being a little bit uncooperative right now. So apologies for that. But I, as a layperson, I've seen several times in my short life people say, we have our guy, or he's on our side now. And perhaps the best thing about Russell Brand is that when it was brought up fairly recently, after like his Tucker Carlson show, someone brought up that Russell Brand had prayed with Tucker Carlson and it was a good prayer. And a lot of the reaction to my Bible study was, do we have to like him now? And that's a lot better than, oh, look, here's a guy we can like now in a position. And then I was also thinking, like, if we compare him to St. Paul, 14 years is a really long time, and it's probably an impossibility in the digital age. But one of the guys in my Bible study went on his Instagram page, and the first time he talked about having any kind of faith was 2019. So if he goes from 2019 to only a few months ago of more frequently praying in public, that is not as short a turnaround as we've seen, say, someone like Kanye try to engineer if we are to stack them against each other. That being said, you know them by their fruit, and fruit take. Which one of the ladies made the point recently that fruit take a while, and you can learn things about people's fruit publicly. Like, it takes time in a public position for someone even of private character to show fruit. And some of that fruit is gifting. Like, there are people who are good, great Christians who could not handle public platforms. And there are people who are then gifted or otherwise mature enough over time. And so, like, just coming from sort of a, like, do I want Russell Brand to be on my side? I really feel the temptation, because I'm a really good little extremist with whatever my project of the year is. But if in 15 years or even 5, he says, yeah, back then I really was the chief of all sinners, that's probably when we would actually maybe start to get a beat on him.
All right, good. All right, Grim Grizz, you didn't say much about Jordan Peterson's participation in the prayer, but you had a lot to say about Russell. So
that's funny, because that's exactly what I was coming on to critique this channel for in this moment, because it's like he goes out in his jester costume to this event with DOD guys, generals, and Tulsi Gabbard, that long may be her reign. But Peterson's participation in this, was he there as a representative of Daily Wire, in the fact that this sphere gets to chase the smoke cloud of Russell Brand's Christianity, is sad. Like, what level of the blue church are we at? How do we have to pretend that he didn't edit a piece for the Fabians? And the Fabians are literally the ones with the wolf and sheep clothing avatar.
Yeah, and see, this is where I'm always at a loss, because I don't follow anything with Russell Brand. I don't know much about him. I don't watch.
You know that he's been to the pits of Hollywood success.
Yes. That we do
And
know. Well,
as such, if he wants to,
Hollywood success so much, but more UK success with some Hollywood.
he was the new
collaboration.
Dudley Moore.
Wasn't he married to Katy Perry?
He was hurt. That's it. The Six of Hearts is the blue shirt. But what do we have to pretend about him? And what if we weren't pretending? Would he actually do if Christ was moving his heart? But no. Well, this is the Peterson sphere. What's it mean to us that Peterson is involved in this in his jester costume? I'll see you later at the good topic.
All right.
Yeah. I came in because of some of the Russell Brand stuff. What people, the way that Grim Grizz has spoken of some of this stuff, because I've looked into it as well.
Okay.
And you would know this, Paul, that within Gnosticism, you'd have people talking about Jesus. And if it was out of a Gnostic context, you'd say, I agree with everything in that prayer. But what you mean by that prayer is completely different.
Yep.
And
that's a concern I have with Brand.
Everyone here agrees that God is great, right? So no one here disagrees with the sentiment Allah Akbar, right? No one here disagrees with that because we all agree with the definition of every single one of those words. And Peterson and Brand have occult interests that if you understand the symbols, it's difficult not to say that they've projected these ideas. And so which Jesus is it? Because there's part of the Lord's Prayer is even used in Baphomet worship. As above, so below is taken as on earth as it is in heaven. Right? As above, so below. That's used in Wicca and in Baphomet worship and all this other stuff. So there's ideas within it that if you go down, which I don't recommend people do, if you go down like occult rabbit holes, you get to Katy Perry like immediately. And that's some of the stuff that who was his ex-wife, right?
I do have a
ex-wife
question, David, though.
Yeah.
Well, Katy Perry is interesting in that she was an evangelical Christian and sort of turned away from it, but I don't really know a lot about. I'm an old dude. I don't know these young people or their music that all you kids seem to have listened to.
Paul, how do you feel about Freemasons? I know this is a weird thing, but within your denomination, are you allowed to be a Freemason and a pastor?
You're not allowed to be a Freemason and a member of the Christian Reformed Church.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that the Christian Reformed Church divided over with the RCA in the 19th century.
Yeah, I assumed there's Freemasonic Bibles, and you'll talk to certain people and they'll say, I don't see any difference. And you just go, okay.
Yeah.
It's funny. You don't know the signs.
Divorcing over same-sex marriage, and I should ask some people, do you think Freemasons should be allowed to be members of the Christian Reformed Church? It'd be very interesting.
If you don't know the signs and symbols, then all this stuff goes right over your head. And that's part of what Grimm's criticisms actually are related to, because there could be two people having a conversation. You know, Sam Tiedemann has actually made jokes about this, that he'll be at a church that's Trinitarian and he will very specifically word his prayers, and there'll be people being like, and they'll be going along with him, and they'll have no idea what he is actually putting before them. But if you know, then you know. And I think that's one of the elements that's actually happening here.
All right.
There's a couple Jesus is.
But I do have a quick question for David.
Go ahead.
David,
I'm not a Freemason.
I was going to ask you, a Freemason, if you would they say out loud in public, Jesus is the King of Lord and Lord of Lords, Lord of all Lords? Would they say that in public? Would the Masons be able to say that?
But how do you define the terms? Would Muslims say that Jesus is the Son of God? In a way, yeah. They're fine with that. They're fine with the virgin birth.
Do you think that a Muslim would say that Jesus is the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the Lord of all Lords? Do you think that a Muslim would say that in public?
But it's how you define terms. There are people that take the story. I mean, Gnosticism is a perfect example. You take Genesis 3 and they say, absolutely, I agree with that. But I think the serpent is the good guy.
So the
Right?
term
Like,
Christ
that's,
Jesus, so that term, that's what I mean. The term
well, that's
Christ
the
Jesus
thing
is
is
the
that
King of Kings and Lord of Lords and the Lord of all lords.
No,
Would they say that in public?
No, David is right. You can, if you mean different things by those terms, you can say them. And that's
what
that's sort of
happens,
where that's a big part of this modernity conversation breaking down, because the propositions don't hold like people who really believe in propositions think they do.
And this is one of the things to realize, and I'm kind of pushing a couple of people with this, is that the bronze serpent becomes an idol in Israel's history.
Right.
They find that people are worshiping it as an idol. And this is part of the story of the Reformation, is realizing that a crucifix could be a graven image. Sorry, all the traditional Catholics and Orthodox and everything. But that's, Jesus says that he is like the bronze serpent, and there is a way that you can invoke that as a talisman and as an idol, and not as a connection with the one true God.
But the bronze serpent pole did serve a purpose, and it was God that put it there.
Yeah, same thing with Jesus. Do you think no one uses a crucifix as a graven image?
Well, I'm sure a lot of people do, because that's people are people.
Yeah.
People will always do what people do. That's just.
And that is the Pharisee warning in the New Testament, right? That's the Simon Magi. How much will it cost for me to be given this power? Anyway.
All right.
That's all I came into.
We've triggered some tensions in the corner too. Because I mean, these are interesting conversations. And yeah. All right. Any last things on this? Otherwise, I'm going to switch to the next topic.
We want our human icons and our human heroes to manifest a type of ideal that we hope for ourselves at the same time, because we want, they've got to invoke the right, they need to have the right motive, saying the right words, and none of us can know at the same time. We can't know that Russell Brand might have repented from so many of those things, and I know that he doesn't ever speak of his relationship with Katy Perry. And the other piece, they're both public figures, and that's what they've gone with, and so their journey is going to be a quasi-public journey. I would contrast it with Shia LaBeouf's journey into Catholicism versus Russell Brand's. I think they've been a little different, but they, I don't know, they are also, I've stuff with, I don't know all the deep symbolic stuff that Grimm and David do, but
I will say this:
the public arc with Russell Brand is, he found some sobriety. He got stable enough in his life to have his marriage still intact, even after it seems like the controversy that took place around last winter, with the allegations being brought up against him. And he has small children, and he has chosen to not do Hollywood as his profession. He's gotten away from that, and he wants to be on a different side of the political, but now he's brought in a spiritual faith related to it. And so I think only time will tell, and like you said, he might look back and be embarrassed about some of this stuff, or he may be proud of it. But he's also, when Jordan Hall became a Christian, even though that's not different, he wanted to talk about it. Hopefully when something good happens in our life, we want to talk about it. So that could be a reality as well. And
All right.
I do want to say this.
Nate, I think this is going to, I think there might be a good conversation to have, maybe between David and Nate over on Grail Country, over Jehovah's Witness level of reasoning. But I'm gonna drop y'all from the screen right now and move on to the next topic. All right, the next topic has to do with this question. There we go. I make it a little bigger this way. This video. Oops, I got to do this. I got to do the crawl too. Cancellation and the logic of Christianity. it was that conversation between Alex Kashuda and Nina Power. That was an amazing conversation. It was so funny because Vivian was giving me crap in the comments because I wasn't sufficiently happy with that conversation. I loved that conversation. That was an astoundingly good conversation. And the talk about status in terms of this world of affluence where it seems we have status, and that's what we're fighting at. And cancellation is in many respects about status. Age of anxiety in the digital age, the allurement of online ideologies. I thought the entire conversation was astounding. Now the thumbnail, I do have to make things for YouTube, and I don't know that the thumbnail served the conversation. If people haven't caught Nate P's conversation with Chad on Chad's channel, boy, what a good conversation. Another great one. And then I was also, and it was interesting because Grim Grizz in his working over that video said, well, what does this, we're all living in Versailles now mean? It means that here you have people living in Versailles. They're completely buffered from the world of the rest of the French nation. And all they're caring about are all the little petty intrigues between all of the high status people. And we care about what they wear. We care about what they eat. We care about the fashion. And what social media has done is sort of elevated everyone into this rarefied royal court. And now all we have are these little social media spats. And we have all these little dramas. And it all has to do with ego and status. And so then Nina Power comes in, and basically, I don't know the details of any of this because I just don't know. She basically says cancellation has been good for me, and it's a deeply Christian thing. And that really connected with me in that I've long read the Jesus on the Sermon on the Mount basically telling his disciples, if you're not regularly doing things that sort of threaten to get you canceled because you are because of the prophetic misalignment between this world and the next, you're probably not doing it right. And finally, you should be committed to God and not your reputation. And what this, we're all living in Versailles all the time now, means what happens in Versailles is that it's just reputational knife warfare constantly, and everyone is just a sycophant to the king or to the queen. And but they're not really committed to the king. They're really committed to themselves. So all right, I am going to Christian has something to say about this too.
I'm just hanging out. I'll have the conversation with, there's nobody else here, if that's the
all
case.
Right, go for it.
I mean, the idea of cancellation, I think that now, I don't know the backstories on the people that you mentioned, but that the landscape feels different to me than it did 4 or 5 years ago, because I feel like there was a closed loop within media until Elon Musk bought Twitter, that it was kind of everything. But once that loop isn't a closed loop, it actually decreases the power of what that cancellation means. And so, and I don't know, we're seeing, the more I see culturally what's happening, even right now with the quote unquote, there was a movie that came out with Nicolas Cage this year. Grim saw it. We talked about, I did a little movie review on it, and it's about going viral. And this college professor is in everybody's dreams, right?
Yeah.
So he gets canceled because he starts killing people in his dreams. And in the story, his agent, he was supposed to go on this book tour and to go on TV and news and everything. And he said, it's okay. I can get you on Jordan Peterson. We can get you on Joe Rogan. We can get you on the alternative media. But even just today, I saw that like Theo Vaughn is having on Miranda Lambert, like a very normal. Yeah, and he had on Trump, but he's had on John Vervaeke. He's like the alternative media. I think we're seeing a shift to where all the people that would have done things that got canceled 5 years ago is becoming very mainstream. And I will even just say that me getting on the internet and to start talking, I probably subconsciously felt that it's not as dangerous as it once was. So,
okay, that's helpful. Alex, what say you?
Well, it's hard to not think of power when it comes to cancellation and how that plays out. And as far as what that is, who is allowed to say their opinion with no repercussions, right?
Nobody.
Right. Well, I mean, the concept of cancellation
Except
is
maybe Donald Trump, because the getting shot in Fifth Avenue line.
right.
But even him, it seems.
So again, is that like when you can see it in plain daylight that there's some kind of that the jig is up, that it's the same thing over and over and over, same theme. This notion, this idea is allowed, but this one is not. So then the question is, okay, who is against that idea? And you begin to see, I mean, that's why it's one of those things where it's hard not to think how powerful is this power structure that controls mainstream mainline voices, because again, that's where it started, but it has evolved to now some people are allowed to have it was as a effect of the power, the what it yields, what it affords, persuasion, manipulation, toe the line, because it does have an effect.
Well, I often hear people, and this was big in the height of the woke, anti-woke wars, was people are like, well, I'm not allowed to say. And it's like, no, you are allowed to say. You just have to be willing to pay a price.
Right.
And what we want is to be able to say what we want is to say what we want to say and not pay a price. So let's see, I've got to.
But the question is, who's the one that's who's the one that's dishing out the piper? Right? If you're going to pay the piper, who you're going to pay to? Who's in control of that? That's what I'm saying, is that power behind that.
Well, of course, people are always playing to different audiences, and Jesus makes the point: play only to God. Don't play to the rest of the audience. Yet Jesus was enormously savvy in terms of how he worked his audience. Render to Caesar what is Caesar, render to God what is God's. I mean, if there ever was a really deft move that moved history, but Chad's point here too, as I think, which is the same point that Christian was just making, the relational economy has moved. The relational economy has moved to such a degree that getting canceled by some people gives you status in another tribe that has gotten now enough power that you want to be canceled, and that's why Phlebas says I so need to be canceled.
I'd make 2 points. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go, Christian.
I'd make 2 points. One is that the people that paid the price early got the most treasure.
Yes.
And they the price for Peterson, even Brand moving out of Hollywood and deciding to say, you know, be a mouthpiece for Alex Jones, like, is when he got canceled was like you gained even though it cost him his job to be able to get jobs in Hollywood, it cost Jordan Peterson his career as a professor. They did gain a treasure for being, you could call it brave, you could call it stupid, whatever you want to call it. They got the gold. Same thing for, you know, Rogan didn't have to create the most entertaining podcast. He just had to be willing to do it. And he did it for a long time. So I think that's just a part of the reality. And the other side of it is an interview that he was already mentioned earlier in the conversation. David Fuller did an interview with somebody named Paul Vanderklay a long time ago. And Paul Vanderklay made a statement that said, getting, you know, 7 years ago, getting on YouTube is for people that don't have much to lose. If you know, because there is a risk involved. Yes. Because people are like, why are you talking about this heretic? You know, Christian pastor. Yep.
And but you should also, there are a lot of people who jump and are early at things and they're just wrong. And that's the risk. It's the risk reward dynamic.
Yes.
Chad the alcoholic. Now Tayo says we need a new cast. And so if anybody thinks we need a new cast, come in yourselves, because I'm only working with who volunteers. I don't have a lot of people sitting in the backstage. So people, if you want to hear other voices, be the voice. Chad, what say you?
I've been trying to leave, but they won't cancel me. Well, the only people that like pay the price is like the founders of Black Lives Matter, Don Lemon. Who else paid the price? Like they didn't. Like nobody paid a price. Never did, except Alex Jones. I think he paid like an astronomical amount of money, but that had nothing to do with cancellation.
Grim Grizz in his in his conversation with Parson that was a great conversation.
It was good.
But he mentioned Owen Benjamin. I thought, wow, when's the last time did I hear of Owen Benjamin? He's probably still out there. I don't think he's dead. But what happened to Owen Benjamin? He was a big deal for a minute.
I never heard of him.
Have you guys ever heard of Canary Cry Radio?
No.
No. Yeah. They got canceled a while back ago. They were Christian and they were never able to come back. They were canceled left and right early on.
You know,
yeah, but it doesn't count if it's Canadian Thanksgiving, Phlebas.
Yeah, we should get David Fuller back. Someone should find that guy. But he's probably going to pull that Saul move. You know what I mean? That Paul Saul move where he's going to go away for like 10 years. And then someday he's going to pop up in the brand new Blue Church, Reformed Blue Church, and tell us all this harrowing story of his wild time in the 20-aughts, in the 2020s, and blah, 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 whatever. I'm just rambling.
Part of what the point I was making, Chad, is that really effective canceling is memory holding. We don't even notice someone who has been canceled. They are forgotten. They are wiped clean, and we don't mention their name because they become those who must not be named, and then they become those who can't be named. Mm-hmm. And so, and again, I think Jesus has a lot to say about that. And I think Jesus, and this gets back to the last question about praying in public. A number of people on that video said, if they're praying in public, they're disobeying Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. And I think that's a fair point, because Jesus, I think basically there is reiterating the third commandment, which is don't sign God's name onto what's yours. Don't write checks and forge God's name on it. So, and Jesus, I think, says, live. Oz Guinness wrote a good book a number of years ago about the audience of one. Live before an audience of one, and you can find that in Luke's favorite movie. I forget the name of it, but
classic.
Yeah, the one where the guy resisted the Nazis.
Have you seen it yet?
No, I haven't.
Oh man, that is such a good movie. A Hidden Life. Yeah.
A Hidden Life. That's it. That's it.
But you
All
won't
right.
watch it, will you? Because you're like, you don't like the Jesus movie stuff, do you? Too much.
I'll watch that movie. I like those kind of
Oh.
Jesus movies. I just Terrence Malick. I like Terrence Malick. I think he's a deep movie maker. He's just if I'm gonna watch a movie like that, I have to sell it to the rest of my family.
Oh, good
Terrence
luck.
Malick movies are a hard sell.
Yeah. Even my wife was like, he could have just left. I'm like, no, he couldn't have. That was the point. Anyways.
And part of the problem that I have is we watch movies tend to be a little bit later, and I tend to fall asleep in front of the television. And my wife is like, "You picked the movie, I didn't like it, and you fell asleep on it, so it doesn't go well." So then I
Paul, what is the Blue Church Reformation going to look like?
I don't know, Chad. I don't know. All right, I'm going to clear the deck, and because I've got two more topics.
Good. Don't let me back in.
Don't let Chad back in. That's so funny. All right, next topic. I'm kind of curious which topic Grizz thought was the good one. There's a bunch of my videos, and it's obvious which videos are going to be loved by Algo and which ones aren't. But actually, I had a conversation with Cassidy. It wasn't a recorded conversation. We were doing some other breakwater business with her, and I mentioned that for a long time, I first this came to consciousness first watching The Critical Drinker. I really like these. Hello, Rue. I really like these movie analysis videos. I really love like Stories of Old, Thomas Flight. I really love those channels because, again, I think movies are sort of the movie theater has been the church of America throughout the 20th century, and the television has been the shrine. And so that's part of what, Grim Grizz. And I noticed, like, a lot of Hollywood Critical Drinker videos, he's just repeatedly running scenes from the trailer, and a really thoughtful editor, like Stories of Old, the images and the clips they show, because they're so carefully selected, add to the presentation. And then I noted, so everybody knows Paul Anleitner and Deep Talks. He's very much in the corner, but he has a few videos where he's done the Hollywood movie thing, especially with respect to superheroes. And some of those movies have hundreds of thousands of views, whereas most of the rest of the stuff that he's doing which is much more TLC-like stuff, is like a few thousand views, if that. So it led me to believe that there is a state of hypnosis that is coming upon us because of the iconography of our deep cultural religion. And then it brought up the metaphor that this is, of course, if you go to an Orthodox church, I don't know a lot about Orthodox churches, but every now and then I'll watch St. Elijah because they're on TV, and I first subscribed to them for the priest was doing a study on the Gospel of John, which I thought was really good. And, so here you have this wall. And of course, that gets into the Protestant Reformation, where they took down the wall and they got rid of the altar. And I mean, all of these issues. And you have the iconostasis, which is here you have all of the icons separating the altar from the people. And, a lot of really helpful comments about Orthodox liturgy on that. And I had made a short video, but there was a very specific reason why I needed to take that short video down. I'm not going to mention it, and I'm just going to drive a whole bunch of you crazy to think about it. But there's a reason I took that video down and then did the longer video. So once I had that thought, and then of course I watched sort of a bunch of the new Joker things, and Byrne also doesn't do. I'm just going to keep showing you cheap images just to hold your attention while I sort of smuggle in my video essay, my essay underneath. But a lot of channels do that, and it's a way to it's basically a graven image way of working the algorithm. So poor Tayo. Tayo, if you want a new cast, you got to come in here and don't be hating on Christian. Chad says I shouldn't let him in, but I don't want to spark another firestorm.
Listen, most time I'm working on Friday in the recent history. So Grim, you go first.
Grim, this is a topic I figured Grim was going to want to talk about.
Yeah, the first, except that nobody knows what an iconostasis is. I thought it was like your best video essay in the last recent while. Was my impression.
Thank you.
And
did you treat it on your channel?
Yeah, I was going to, and part of that was this. If you want to bring it up, I thought this from earlier in the week really underlined what was happening as far as the iconostasis goes, and the way the layer of symbolisms work, and I tie that to our background and intentionality network from the old what's his face brought us, Vocal, right?
Yeah.
And that what's neat about stories is they're how we update the background, not the propositional.
Yes.
That connection. So
yes. No, that's excellent. No, I too, I thought when I saw this, it was like, wow, this is really important. So I was really excited to talk about it, and it just didn't get much traction, and probably partly again because I think the Orthodox saw me use that word and were offended, and a lot of other people heard the word and thought, what? And like Stories of Old, there's a fair amount of people around here that know the Like Stories of Old channel. I think he's really good, although I obviously have some real what he did with when he sort of took the reductionist view of narrative. I kind of bit him hard in that, and we had a little bit of interchange back and forth.
Oh, but, nice! There was drama between you and the movie guy. That's nice.
Yeah. Well, you know, Thomas Flight. There is a video in the membership section. So there is a lot of resonance between the movie guys and what we're doing, and a lot of that is because of you, Grizz, because you have shown us exactly what you just laid out between the forefront and the background, and the role of the background. And a lot of ways, that forefront and background is very much God number one and God number two.
Oh, we're not going into that.
All right, Grizz had his say. Alex, you jumped back in.
Yeah, just because Tayo, I wasn't gonna jump in, but Tayo, yeah, there you go. This one's for you, Tayo. I'm kidding. No, when it comes to Hollywood, I mean, if anybody doesn't think that they don't have influence on, especially in the most malleable, the young ones, because I have kids, and my oldest one's a teenager, and my youngest one is 11. I mean, and I was a kid once. I know that they're highly influential. The theory of conformity, right? And also the people that allow certain movies. It's not just about the movies they make, is the people holding what is made and what is not made. Because I guarantee you there's a lot of good stories that will never be, well, at least in the past, that will never be made because some people says, nope, we can't tell that story. Nope, we can't tell that story. But nowadays with the internet, those stories are breaking out. Right, freelancers, they're telling stories that otherwise wouldn't be told because they go against what they want us to perceive as reality. This is reality. Conform to this reality. This is what is normal. This right, and they don't want to allow other worldviews.
Right.
They
are controlling. And Grizz, I mean, again, Grizz colonized me bad this week just with one sentence that Set is a normalizing ray, and that hit me like a ton of bricks, because it's like, oh crap. I would have needed 1,000 words, and Grim just put it just right there, and it was like, yeah, that's right. And that's all of that backgrounding that is happening.
Were you going to say something else, Grim, before?
Well, yeah, to to further enunciate the archetypal resonance nature of the iconography of Hollywood into the graphic interchange format and how that's a language of sorts. Those are the gifs people play of movie clips. And that for those of you old enough or willing to search for it, the key to understanding all of this, as far as to how it's a language, is from the Star Trek: The Next Generation episode, where Darmok is at Tanagra, and Picard and an alien have to work things out, and the alien speaks language in this way, through historical iconography. That's a key that you can entertain yourselves with and help your understanding.
Grizz, you should somewhere tell us exactly what one to watch, because now via streaming television I have access to back catalogs now of these shows. I watched, because of Neil, I watched an episode of Star Trek Voyager, so I'd very much like to see that episode, but you're gonna have to be more specific, because what you gave us, I'll never find it.
It's called Darmok, isn't it?
I would search for either Darmok at Tanagra or Shaka When the Walls Fell. And if you look up Shaka When the Walls Fell, and it'll tell you which episode, what the actual episode name was. But do check it out on IMDb, because we love it there.
The title is Darmok.
Yeah, it's Darmok. Darmok.
The title of the episode.
It's very enlightening. Right. I love you all.
Season 5, episode 2.
All right. Well, we want to give a special thanks to Michael Satori, even though he's really a regular, because Tayo really wanted a new cast. And so now, thanks to Michael, we have a new cast. I agree, Amanda. DS9 was the best. I love DS9.
I also agree. Yeah, it's interesting. I definitely have noticed, like, in the moments when I've had the time, that doing the pictures and the things, like, it does get you more attention in the algorithm. And even, like, I've had one or two where I wrote a whole thing, like I put it on Substack, and then I decided to make the video, and it had all the same text, but I had to add that whole other element to it. And I think, well, so obviously it kind of brings up the typical critique that you get of, like, the megachurch experience, that you have these, sensory overwhelm or whatever. But I had a talk a while back with Christian Golden, and we were talking about kind of that thing. And what I basically came up with this idea, we have the myth of religious neutrality. Right. And I think that there is also this myth of emotional neutrality, where when people say, like, I'm being rational and I'm sticking to the facts and I'm not going to be emotionally manipulated, you are already under a set of emotional forces that you are unaware of by doing that. So, I think, obviously it's, with great power comes great responsibility. So, but, I think when well-intentioned, the Lord can use those things for good. So, yeah.
All right. No, I think that's right. And it is, I mean, if anybody's playing with YouTube, I know Christian is, but Christian, you've not really, I mean, you've had some higher status people on, and you did get a taste when you played that bootleg video of Peterson at the Symbolic World. So you did get a taste, but if you do any playing at all with Algo, you very quickly realize that it demands a degree of religious obeisance. And it is YouTube, thanks to Mr. Beast, it is YouTube dogma that you have to have the YouTuber's face on with some dramatic pose, and then you
Yeah.
know, so many channels, it's just the same dumb. I mean, I
Someone asked me about this the other day, like, "Are you gonna do the face on your?" And I said, I'm not gonna play the trend game. I might someday, but right now that just doesn't interest me because that's not what I'm here. I'm not here to play the YouTube trend, I guess you could say. But I'm here to have conversations. Which to this point on the iconostasis is, I had a recent conversation with Justin Wells again, who is a Hollywood Emmy award-winning camera technician,
yes,
who teaches documentary film at Biola University, and we talked about Hollywood in particular, that the ideas that when Jung and Freud pulled certain ideas away from religion, and then there was one other guy who influenced Joseph Campbell, and then Joseph Campbell influenced George Lucas, and then there was another guy who is now doing like kind of conferences, and Justin said he was at a conference back in 2008 with this guy who was speaking, and there were the Disney people were there, the Pixar people were there, Drew Barrymore was there because she was trying to get her director become a director, and he said it's so interesting because, you know, we look at what Hollywood's doing with ideas right now, and we can have the kind of conspiratorial or you know, conservative critique of what they're doing, but some of it's not even intentional. They just don't even know where the good stories are coming from. They don't even know where to look for the good story. And so he's really interested in helping continue to shape culture out there and actually do a little more teaching, because he's looked at what these guys who are helping novelists write called StoryGrid, and StoryGrid, and you did some treatment of his information with Cohen and Vervaeke.
Sean Coyne. Yeah.
And you know, speaking of Christian Golden, I was on a stream 8 months ago when Matt Krotz asked the question to all the people doing the thinky talky stuff, hey, who's going to make the culture? Who's going to make the album? Who's going to write the books? Who's going to you know, make the album? Who's going to make the movies? And I think that, I mean, I think there's people, and you asked that same question about music just the other day, and there are people, and I'm actually trying to have a few of those conversations of people that they don't participate as much because I think they're doing some things, you know, and to see what they're a part of and what they're building, all of it downstream from the phenomenon that took place, you know, almost a decade ago now. And I think that's good. I think Hollywood their iconostasis will be shaken up in the next coming years. We'll be surprised by what hits and what comes about. Yeah. Anyways, thanks for tolerating my monotonous presence, Teo, and Paul. Thanks for hanging out with me today.
Well, I mean, there is, fortunately, in the system, there are gravities at play. I mean, part of the reason why everyone in Hollywood is beautiful is because there's a gravity, but there is a storytelling gravity that is at play. And, you know, all of these motivated, even like Stories of Old, not an IDW channel in any respect, you know, basically called out that a lot of the social justice engineering that Hollywood has done has been a disaster. And so they've had to pull back from that just because of the box office. So there are multiple gravities at work, and there is a truthiness about storytelling, which does in fact come through. And yeah, Justin, it's funny because Justin has an amazing channel and has had zero success on YouTube, which startles me, even though it's an amazing channel. All right, Mark D. Parker. Well, this is kind of an interesting one for you to jump in on. I wouldn't have expected you to pick up on this one, but so I'm really curious what you have to say.
Well, I'm stuck at a car dealership getting my oil changed, and I thought, well, if I had to, I could just do what Andrew does and eat my Panera in the background.
Well, at least you're satisfying Tayo, and that now we have a new cast member to look at. But streaming from the car dealership while you're getting your car worked on, I love it. I love it because there's so often when you're in that darn car. Are you on their Wi-Fi or on your mobile?
I'm on their Wi-Fi, actually. It looks
pretty good.
Yeah, so I'm
impressed.
Yeah.
Dare you mention the
Work in the
brand
system.
of the car dealer?
Mazda. Actually, it's really good. It's a really good dealership, by the way, here. Excellent.
My Mazda
So
dealership
very
in
happy.
Sacramento is also excellent. So
Yeah, I'm
I
very
love my
happy with them.
Mazda. Sold it to my daughter. So all right. Do you have anything on topic, or did you just want
Well,
to?
yeah, I had something I got to remember. I also had to run from the chat because I triggered the hive mind with my opinions on Snowden. So I'm dealing with that too.
Snowden is not the topic right now. I forbid you to go into Snowden.
Life in the radical center is dangerous around here. I had it. I think it's on topic. What my daughter did is taking a class, took her show notes and put them into an AI that produced a podcast episode to help as a study aid. And it's a completely believable. It sounds like something out of NPR, all fake voices, but
Yeah,
it's
we've been
big.
talking about that. Notebook LM.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then you're thinking more and more, all canned content, all pop content is probably going to be so easily generated. The AI is going to flood the zone with this garbage so that what they're going to want is more of this. It's not going to look like this necessarily, but it's going to be more of this, what we're
They'll be
doing
better
right
looking
here.
than we are.
Maybe.
The stories that were not allowed to be told in the past.
But but just think of, right now we're just a little tiny fraction of a fraction that's doing this sort of thing. Everyone else is still passively just taking it in. But that's going to get really stale really fast when you can have 100,000 Seinfelds, all of equal quality, being generated annually.
I don't know if
And
they'll be able to actually generate Seinfeld. That's
I don't know. I'm just suggesting that the quality, though, is in terms of predictable
but they can mix and match
entertainment.
Yes. But we've seen that. I mean, I recently saw one of these videos on the death of the sitcom. It wasn't a particularly good video, but him pointing out the death of the sitcom is important because that was for a long time a Hollywood staple, and it became map territory. And we have language for this. We see that dynamic. We would say that work is derivative, but I think you're right in that AI it's just going to keep raising the floor. And I also watched another interesting YouTube video about how, people are really trying hard. You take a viral video. Here's how you do it. I'll tell everyone how to do it. If you want to be a success on YouTube, so the saying goes, but you can only you should have done it 10 minutes ago because Christian was right about first in, the early adopters. You find a viral video on YouTube, you download the transcript, you throw the transcript into AI to rewrite it and sort of clean it up. You add new Hollywood iconostasis images on top of it, and you throw it back on YouTube. And you figure out how to do this so efficiently. For that one viral video, you can throw 100 videos of YouTube that are just like it. And what happens is that algo very quickly begins to adapt, and then those videos don't do so well. And so that's exactly the process that's happening. And right now it's AI versus AI in terms of algo versus all of the AI generated content. Like I regularly talk to people who are like, you can make money on YouTube. AI really makes things easy. I'm going to use AI to make lots of YouTube videos so I can get lots of watchers. But algo sees all this AI generated content and says, nope, not promoting that, not promoting that. So we are computer versus computer already on this stuff.
I'm experimenting. I'm sorry.
The phrase again, not promoting that. Does that mean the algo is going to allow certain things out there and not allow other things? Is that back to the control?
Alex, I saw that you recently posted a video, and I saw it because you and I have talked, and Algo knows this. But if you're regularly putting videos on YouTube, algo is a gatekeeper. Seriously. Yep. Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I'm right now. This is my experimental stage, so I'm trying a lot of different things. And like next up is to try. We're going to do like a estuary / book club approach to a hot new rom-com, and a few of the guys have decided to join in, and we're going to. It's what's it called? Nobody Wants This on Netflix. You should join in, Paul. And we'll just, it's or anybody is invited, of course. But the idea is we'll work through like at 10 episodes total. So we'll probably do 4 of these to work through in groups of 3, and then maybe the last one plus the finale and then a wrap. And then but it's going to be working because it works with a lot of the topics that are corner oriented.
What's the name of the show?
Nobody wants this. It's a LA. It screams LA. The first 15 minutes you want to poke your eyes out because it's very LA culture, right? But it's a girl who's very LA. In fact, she has a podcast. It's about to break big with Spotify. So she's successful, but she's very LA, very very woke left, and she falls for a rabbi who just fell out of what was kind of an engagement. So it was an oppressive sort of relationship, and they fall for each other. But of course, nobody in their worlds wants this. But they're dealing with because it's family tradition, and they poke an awful lot of fun at LA culture in the process. And so there's a lot. I think there's something to work with, and it's got some big names in it.
There's a lot. That would be a lot to work with.
If you can tolerate the first 15 minutes of the first episode, once it gets then it starts to really hit. And once they caught traction, it's been really strong. So I've only gone through 4 episodes so far, and but so this is an experiment. I want to do like I said, an estuary / book club type of approach where that's our topic, but we're going to talk about it.
All right.
Right now it's all guys. We need to get some women, and
you're doing a rom-com.
We should get women in there. So I need some girls.
The Connecticut event is about 50% women.
Oh, cool.
So it's really interesting the men women thing. Okay.
So maybe I'll recruit somebody. All right. Thank you.
I'm going to drop you all off, and we're going to move on to the last topic of the day, which is the TLC and estuary versus the machine world. This goes back to my conversation with John Vervaecchio. This touches on what Mark just said about as AI sort of keeps raising the floor on now you can just AI this schlock out onto YouTube forever, and we're all going to see this as map territory, and it's going to push what Tom Vanderlinde from Like Stories of Old talked about. You could look at Steve Martin in Leap of Faith, the Genuine article. It's going to force us to do real art and to recognize real art. So, and this one I expected to be a broader group of people. So Tayo, join us, our friends. So, okay, what do you think? Is face-to-face even over these electronic tools and in-person live estuary things? Is that the answer to the machine world?
Yes.
I think that's why we're all here.
I think, what was it? Somebody used the illustration of Safe Harbor.
I used that illustration. That was in a members only video.
Yeah. So, I mean, I really love that. And it really ties in very well with Grim Grizz's flotillas of meaning that you find, certain people are going to find themselves in these spaces. And then when I was at Symbolic World and I met Grim and I was sitting with him, I posted that picture of him on Twitter with the savings throw the other day. When we were sitting at that table, there was somebody that came up and said, "Hey, it's Grim Grizz," and Grim said, "Hey, touch my hand." And he reached up and he touched his hand. And that really symbolically to me, in that moment, I was like, oh, real person from the digital world. And so I think that is, jumping, using Set and Cell and Horus and all these people to find each other in the Matrix. And then, because that's the world we live in, it's, for whatever reason, when we're trapped in ourselves and we're only getting the information that I guess we're interested in, that we know the 10 people that live next to us are not interested in, how do we even have that conversation? That'll be a part of life. But we also are going to have to figure out the part about, well, what do you talk to your neighbor about? And then maybe that's the help of the estuary, trying to, Afriel used the illustration of a crank motor for those first 2 rounds of Estuary to crank the motor and get the conversation. So I thought that was an excellent illustration as well. So yeah, I'm out of here. Y'all have a good day.
All right. Steve, what say you?
Hi. Yeah, I was thinking when you guys were talking about the bots, or anyway, all the online stuff, and maybe this is a question for Clara, but is there a noticeable difference between the topics of conversation in the live streams versus in a estuary or in face-to-face situations? And
how would Clara know? Clara hasn't been to that many estuary meetings.
Then she should go.
Well, I agree.
Maybe not. I don't know.
I
don't know what her specific.
I will
study
answer your
is, but my
question.
point-
I'll answer your question, because actually this is a regular topic of conversation between myself and John Van Donk. And it's something that I notice.
Hello?
Yeah, we're still here. We know your internet is wonky. In John's estuary and my estuary, only a portion of the people in a local estuary have any understanding of what we are doing online. And what that means is sometimes people who are connected into the TLC will put something on the table that's very TLC derivative, and it doesn't get much traction unless they have to do the hard work of translating it in a way that the people actually in the room could understand.
Mm-hmm.
And what tends to govern the topics that are at least the conversation starters in the estuary meetings tend to be the personal, and a personal topic that almost everyone can relate to. And that's part of the reason why in my every week estuaries, so often the topics are personal and they're relational, and almost everyone in the room can deal with it. And they're long-term difficult topics that everyone is sort of continuing to chew on.
Mm-hmm.
So, and John Van Donk keeps wanting to shout the difference between the TLC and the estuary. And he's trying to do that because we have a perception problem, because the online is so big and so visible, and the estuaries are far less visible because most of them are made up by people who aren't terribly online. So there is an answer, and there is an illusory factor going on.
My guess, and I think, and it might address the whole AI thing, and the threat of AI to us or whatever. Is that it seems like a lot of the talking in the TLC, the discussion is about other people and what other people are doing. And my guess is that in person, it's much more about what am I doing? What are you doing? What are we doing?
Absolutely.
And it's like, until they make like good robots to hang out with us, I mean, we're not going to get like direct manipulation from like media in our conversations from people we're talking to, other than like through robots. And of course, all the media I'm exposed to, I just regurgitate that crap anyway. But I guess my question about that was related to the machine world. What's the machine world trying to do versus I trying to do, and the people who I'm interacting with in the real world, what are they trying to do? The agenda or the goals are different, and I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, like the more connected I've been getting where I live, I'm less concerned about. I'm less concerned about what the media machine world has been trying to occupy my time with.
Yep. A lot of the current AI trauma is about the fact that we are very online people, and it is impacting online first. Alan, Chad loves your eyes,
I mean, Chad's a sweetheart, you know. I mean, hey, you guys. The thing that I found works in Estuary really well is lecturing people and telling them what to think, you know. And if they try and cut you off, is you don't let them cut you off. You say, "I'm talking. This is my time. I don't care if it's been 15 minutes. I'll take the whole hour if I feel like it." And I think, you know, a lot of people aren't realizing the power of just being intransigent and refusing to cede the floor. So I think that's a huge missed opportunity for the smart, you know, the smart, capable people need to start rising up and seizing the means of communication. So that's just I mean, I'm just throwing that out there. Feel free to agree, disagree. I mean, I'm not, you know, so,
They
but,
have taken the control. It's just that the smart, capable people are also self-centered and satanic. You know?
All
I
right.
never thought of it that way. But the other thing is, I mean, I do think that the thinky-talky, like, there is value to it because it's like, oh, my grandma never had to be told the value of communication. Your grandma also didn't have an iPad, so I don't know what to tell you. You know, like when she was spinning yarn, she wasn't like, you know, the fentanyl wasn't in hand's reach. You know, she wasn't being prescribed meth for her ADHD. You know, it's just like I don't know. Like that is the secret of the corner of like, yeah, like I mean, it reminds me of when Paul of Tarsus says, "Don't you know you will even judge the angels?" It's like you got to be ready to judge the angels. Like you're not ready now. It's like, but yeah, like it's like, yeah, like grandma didn't have these problems, but grandma didn't have the power that we have and didn't have the options that we have. So it's like more options, more responsibility. You know, someone similarly as educated as Paul of Tarsus. You know, Uncle Ben from Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. So it's like my point is just like all the thinky talky. It's like it does give you tools in your hand to make those decisions. So yeah, one day maybe you'll even be ready to actually live, you know, be in charge of something important. Maybe one day you'll even judge the angels. It's like, so it's like, you know, we need the point of the machine of like breaking away from the machine is like and having these little areas is I do think it's good. It's a good training ground to actually have real conversations and actually understand people. Because maybe one day you'll have to make an important decision that affects other people.
All right. Michael.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because I kind of have been approaching this thing from both sides the whole time, thinking about more of these topics and these things are what the church needs to be more aware of. And yeah, I've noticed that, like in my in-person Bible study, like everybody's got some algorithms giving them something, and it's starting to connect more. You know, like as I had a guy come up in the parking lot at church, and he said, "Hey, what do you know about Jonathan Pajot?" And so, like, you know, this stuff happens. But I think that, you know, while, you know, we can always say like the personal is the best, there's a lot of value in having these other things going all the time, because you know, we do have this sort of slow on-ramp process, like from lurker to commenter to, you know, jumping on live streams and starting your own thing or whatever. And sometimes that, you know, leads to in-person things for some people.
but I was gonna say, yeah. So there's the algorithm kept sending me this marketing guy, this British marketing guy, and talking about how like McDonald's added the screens when you can order, but they kept the people too. But then they noticed like now they just have more people that come in and order weird stuff because that they never would have when it was just the person, but they'll do it with the screens. So so having these different options, like we don't have to rank them all in a hierarchy necessarily.
Right. True. All right. Mark D. Parker.
The way you pronounce my name, it makes me sound like a serial killer, Paul. Good seeing you, Michael. I'm hoping to meet you in person
If
this
you
week.
kill
Next
someone
week.
in my sister's house, I'm not going to be happy.
I would never mess up that beautiful home.
She's really
No,
happy to hear that.
Alan's point. When he quoted the scripture and said, "Don't you know you'll judge the angels?" It made me think, well, the messengers, right? Isn't that what an angel is? That's one of the, at least that's the very definition of the word angel. And it's like you're going to judge the messengers. Well, we're kind of doing that now in a sense. And maybe we're going to be doing it in a much deeper and more profound way than we ever imagined. When you think the power of these AIs, there's this supernatural force to them. The media is already supernatural, and it's beyond nature in its power over our minds, and it just seems like it keeps leveling up, and yet we're here judging it, and will be judging it more in the future. I'm just riffing on what Alan said, and that was it. It just inspired me. I thought it was
All right.
interesting.
Tayo has been calling for Pete. I don't know if he texted you or what, but Pete has arrived. Pete, is there anything you were called for a while ago? I don't know if there's something you have to.
I don't know, man. Well, thanks, guys. I feel the love. I kind of needed it. It's sort of a strange day, but no, I mean, I kind of missed, and I'm sorry, Mark. You were kind of down there?
He said he was basically supporting Michael in that, which is good to know.
Okay, yeah, and I kind of
Mark being a boomer and Michael having said what he has about our beloved generation.
I missed part of the conversation, so I apologize for that as I was trying to log on. But I was just wondering if maybe there's sort of a false dichotomy of like us versus the machines. Haven't we always had some kind of relationship to technology and art that is outside of us? It's always an extension of us and allows us to sort of, like I'm thinking about story, right? Story seems like in a way is a form of technology, and the way we craft stories to tell people information or to help them to connect with the past or something like that in a way that they wouldn't before is always sort of like this. You have to project yourself out into the imaginal space, and so it's always going to extend you out. So I wonder if maybe there's just a way that we can approach the future with maybe some optimistic, I don't know, engagement. I mean, obviously we're engaging with the technology, but do we always have a sense that it's going to turn in on us and like betray us?
Well, this is, if anybody watched the sequels, were definitely not as good as The Matrix, but those were the questions that kept getting asked in the sequels of The Matrix, that it is our technology. And many movies have gotten into that question. These are our children.
Right.
And, Battlestar Galactica gets into that. So that's a very common question. And so then you can get very symbolic and think about, patricide and matricide of the children killing the parents. So, and this is, our perennial fear is that our tools are going to do us in.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is common anxiety expressed in science fiction.
And I think we have a partnership with those tools in a way, right? I mean, we shape them for a particular purpose. We have a goal in mind. We have an object we need to or a goal we need to achieve. So we shape the tool to achieve the goal. As we use the tool shapes us. And yeah, there is kind of like a push and play. I wonder if that's maybe why we need a community. We're constantly trying to check in to make sure we're not being abused or abusing a tool in a way that would be self-destructive, maybe.
Yep. No, and I think that's why all of this, people don't like conflict. Conflict is important partly because people don't like it. But we need conflict, and we need to have these conversations because this is how we are doing this distributed cognition. And so it's really good we're having conversations about technology. We should say we're having fights about technology, because fights are often, if they're productive, just more intense conversations. So, yeah. Did you have something on the topic, Alex?
Yeah, I wanted to say that the TLC is very different than anything that I've encountered in the past, because I've been on YouTube for years and years and years. And the way I see the TLC is kind of like, so give me a second to play out this metaphor. It's like the snake, and the snake is poisonous, and you have to be aware of the poison, but you get anti-venom from the poison. So TLC is like anti-venom, because I get to hear your thoughts, and I can actually say, well, explain that. I mean, I could, and I hear you guys explain your thoughts, and that's something that has not been allowed in the past for people with these kind of ideas, specifically Christian thought and morality and ethics. Those were squashed really quick, and to hear people, real people, not machines, real people, say their opinions at depth, time and time again, it's way different than anything else that I've encountered in the past. It really is. It's its own unique. I don't know how to describe it, but it's so unique. It's like anti-venom.
Yeah, no, and I think that's right. And I think what we are trying to work on is we are trying to, Jeremy said it really nicely. We are trying to handle snakes here. We're taking up snakes and not being bit. Now we get bit sometimes, but hopefully we're building up a resistance to this venom, and we can, because the goal of this is to use these tools productively. And we are in some ways free riders and parasites on YouTube, because what YouTube would have us be is Mr. Beast. And we are not Mr. Beast. So we are free riders. And so while YouTube is like, okay, we're going to give everyone all this free bandwidth, and you go ahead and make videos, and you can make it about whatever you want, and you post it, and we say, okay, we'll take your bandwidth, but I actually think we are the best use of YouTube, but that's just me.
It's like that, the Rome, building the roads thing. Rome was antagonistic to the church or to the Christians originally. So they were able to, in a sense, sort of subvert the authority of Rome, because they used the roads that Rome had built to extend the gospel and share the gospel. And ultimately that's what, has permeated culture. I think that this is one of those spaces, like, to play off Alex's anti-venom analogy. It's like, it is a sparring ground. This is like a training ground where, I think the best way to participate with YouTube, I have found, is to try to push myself into a zone where I'm like, I'm not exactly like an expert here. I don't exactly know what I'm saying. Like, I'm putting my idea out here. I'm not exactly comfortable even with the idea, but I'm putting it out there, hoping someone else will grapple with it and either help me strengthen that idea or pin that idea down and show me, like, why it's not a good idea, like why it doesn't hold water really. So, like, in a way, like, yeah, you're sort of like getting bit every once in a while. You have to expose yourself to possibly getting bit to get that little bit of antivenom to then be able to use, again, like use the tool, to Paul's point, like in the best way for the best outcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind
All
of.
right. Go ahead.
Real quick, Paul. Just let me
Yep.
talk. Can I talk?
I have to
No,
feed the
just.
dog and let the dog out
Oh,
soon.
okay.
So go ahead.
Sorry. No.
No, go ahead. I've
Just
got
one
a
last
list.
thought. One very quick thought along those lines. This might be the only place where you can actually make peace in places that have been otherwise impossible to make peace. And I'm thinking of all those mushy, media-driven, quote unquote liberal attempts to get Palestinians and Jews, Israelis to talk together. For example, you've seen these little forced gatherings where they get people, Palestinians and Jews, to talk. Just as an example, and it is always forced, and it never accomplishes anything. And then the traditional, conventional, conservative approach has been to convert the other side to my point of view. That's how we fix this problem. We just got to fix their brains. This is the one place where nobody gets fixed according to an agenda, and yet we actually have natural, organic dialogue across very difficult terrain and from very strong positions, but we're actually doing the thing, making the peace that people dream of. And if you're going to fix the world, maybe this is the way and the place to do it.
I think that's right. Now, I was going to close the stream, but can I really deny Sherry? Sherry, as of Northwest Estuary, has embraced the role. Her sister made her see the light that Sherry is, in some ways, the mom of the she was the mom of the Discord, but she very much does have a mothering influence. Okay, I dropped the link, Sherry. You can come on in. No, I think that's exactly right, Mark. And Jordan B. Cooper had a Substack that I read this morning and then I posted on Twitter. He had a nice paragraph about, Twitter and its lack of community. And it's, if you establish the community underneath, I mean, and I've always known this in church. If the people don't have a sufficiently strong relationship that can hold the difficult conversation, the conversation will destroy the relationship. The relationship has to come first, and you have to strengthen that relationship to hold the conversation. And once you do that, you can make progress in a difficult conversation. You might not resolve it in the way that our reductionistic, low resolution gatekeepers demand it be resolved. I see that all the time in the comments. No, I really don't care that much who you vote for if you're an American this coming election. I don't really care. It's not that I don't think it's unimportant. It's just that I think there are more important things. And so I put the other things higher in the hierarchy. Mm-hmm. And communities regularly do that well. And Sherry, I've been here monologuing, waiting for you to come in. And I dropped the link and everything.
One of the things, maybe to pull what Mark was saying and you're saying, Paul, like, I think that, if your goal is to try to convert people, if your goal is to try to be right, then when you lose, you lose.
Right.
If your goal is to learn and to grow and to build community, then when you lose, you win. Because even though I'm wrong, I appreciate you and I appreciate what you said. You called me out on my BS. And because my goal was not to be right, but rather to learn, now you and I are friends. So we built community because we used and again, I think of dialogue and story as tools. They're sort of tools that we've always had with us. These are maybe the most ancient tools even. And if you don't, and this is the Jonathan Pajot just did one with Ben Shapiro that I'm working on, and then he did a conversation with Martin Shaw. Like, when we mishandle these tools, they turn in on us.
Yes.
and self-destruct.
Yes.
And so we're recapturing, or we're discovering how to use these tools in a different setting, basically.
We are showing our mastery over these tools. I think you're exactly right, because I mean, truly, and Michael knows this, he works with tools all the time. The kind of tools that Michael uses all the time can take off your fingers, hands, arms, can take your life.
Yeah.
But they are powerful, important tools. You must master them. Now, these tools are new. And part of what's been happening via the internet is that we have distributed these tools to the public. And, you know, it's like going to a playground and saying, hey, kids, here's a chainsaw. Why don't you run around with a chainsaw? I mean, we made jokes about running with scissors.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've been giving kids, you know, what we've done with, and Jonathan Haidt pointed this out, what we've done with young women are we've basically giving them a relational semi-automatic weapon in the terms of social media. And, you know, because these are feminine tools, they're not shooting up schools in that way. No, you just demonetized my video. But these social media tools are just wreaking havoc. And so we are, you know, Sherry said it, who hasn't showed up, so we might lose it. Yeah, we have the tools are us. That's certainly a degree too, but we have to triumph over these tools.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's not unlike the speech that God gives to Cain and Abel.
I had a little story I wanted to mention that it reminded me of from The Hiding Place, when Corey ten Boom's in the concentration camp, and you know, they're all like knitting socks or something, but she was a watchmaker, and so then they find out like, oh, you can do more complicated things, and she's like wiring up these radio receivers, and she's really enjoying the technical aspect of it. But then she kind of realizes like, oh wait, I'm doing something that's helping the Germans. And so then she kind of figures out, because she's smart enough and she knows the technology enough, how to make it look like they're going to work, but she's actually sabotaging them. And so, you know, but even to think like, even the people that are trying to design these things, like we give Satan too much credit or whatever, like the people that are trying to design these things to destroy the world, like that creative process is like you're channeling like the power of creation. You know, it's a God-given thing to come up with these innovations, and sometimes they start off bad. You know, we had the nuclear bomb before we had the nuclear power plant. You know, and stuff like that. But you know what? Swords can be turned into plowshares. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's a good word to end on. Thank you all for participating. And I'll play a little branding, and off we go. Let's see. What shall we play?
Well, I don't know about the meaning crisis, left, right, black, white, or other vices, which Jesus Christ is right, or if we're all saved. From my perspective, our propositions participate procedurally, running in circles. Remember in body, we're in the age of decay. Symbolically speaking, the reapers are reaping, them damn egregores are whispering sweetly. We're all NPCs in the belly of the beast. Red pill, blue pill, bread pill, Mars Hill, or DMT, or whatever you feel. Got one and number two, it's all the same damn thing. So clean your room, Repent on Zoom, ontology for dummies, a bird's eye view. 'Cause if you really knew, could you really even say? Totally depraved, all totally saved. A total disposition from the bed we all made. Or is it the elect? Or are we just insane? From John Vervaeke to Jonathan Pajot and Jordan Peterson to the Chris Pacou Show. Paul Vanderklays and Griswold Grimm and all the dice he shakes. This estuary ditty is a little bit cringy, ain't quite the U-shaped or the hero's journey. All the NPCs in the flood treading water to watch you save the day with a bunch of chitter-chatter. From the ortho bros to the Catholic Joes or atheistic Joes to Protestant folks, the Joe Schmoes and Jewish Jacobs and everything in between. So love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul, with all your mind and your fingers and toes, all your neighbors too, as if they were your own. So love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul, and with all your mind and your fingers and toes, all your neighbors too, as if they were your own.
This is the story of the search for mind control. Mission Mind Control.
To be able to create something that normally happens in the sun on an island in the Pacific, or to be able to rewrite a cell the way Craig Venter did, synthetic biology. We are now gods, but for the wisdom. The world's most serious human beings should be working on the twin nuclei problem. What do we do with new godlike powers given our history of conflict, our history of envy, our history of madness? We should definitely try it. Everybody believes that should work on that problem. Well, it's the Moses. It's the Moses thing. It's time to go. It's time to leave. This place is over. You get off the planet. I freak people out when I say that, but like, look at your world. Everybody who has a possible plan to avoid what is coming if we don't have one should work on the plan that she thinks best.
Now this is the plan. Get your ass to Moss.
Enough! Just go to the church. Guys, I can't hear the same story any more times of like, I tried to go to church, but it was too hard. Enough. You sit in the seat and you listen, okay? Enough. Just go to the church. Enough. Like, enough. Just go to the church. Enough. I'm tired of hearing your excuses.
Amen.
Enough, folks. Enough. Okay, put your big boy pants on. Enough, folks. We're done. We're done pretending we don't know how to give the pill to the dog.
Right. And they're much simpler than we ever imagined.
It's not that hard. Guys, we need you. High in openness, high in creativity, disagreeable people, you also need to be in the church. You put the pill in the peanut butter. You take the pill, you put it in the peanut butter, you give it to your dog. Enough.
Should be a meme.
That should be a meme.